We hear it literally every single day, right? We're constantly told that resilience is the absolute ultimate virtue. We celebrate people who can just bounce back from adversity, push through the pain, and keep going no matter what the cost. In our workplaces, we glorify these frontline heroics and wear burnout like some sort of badge of honor. But, well, the science is starting to tell a much, much darker story. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to unpack the biological truth about resilience. Because the research shows that when resilience becomes a daily requirement just to survive, it isn't actually a sign of strength at all. It's a blaring warning signal that our internal systems are being completely breached. So, let's kick things off with a question that kind of flips everything we know upside down. What if bouncing back is literally bankrupting your biology? We usually look at resilience as this great psychological triumph, a victory of the mind over difficult circumstances. But your cells, they really don't see it that way. We've got to shift our perspective away from that psychological victory and look at the hidden physiological costs that your body is secretly paying every single time you just tough it out. Section 1. The myth of resilience, bouncing back versus biological reality. To really get why this grit-your-teeth mentality might be doing way more harm than good, we have to look under the hood at two fundamental concepts in biology, homeostasis and allostasis. Now, for a long time, we relied on the traditional homeostatic model. That's the idea that your body relies on reactive, static set points. Think of it like a thermostat that only turns the heat on after the house is already freezing. It's biologically pretty inefficient because it waits for a deficit to actually happen before doing anything about it. But your body is way smarter than that. It taps into the central nervous system for a process called allostasis, which literally translates to achieving stability through change. It's basically your brain acting as this incredible predictive command center, proactively altering your internal settings, like your heart rate, cortisol levels, and all those neuroendocrine resources, just to meet environmental demands before the threat even hits you. Now, allostasis is a brilliant, life-saving mechanism if you need to, say, sprint away from a predator. But here's the catch. In our modern world of constant chronic psychosocial stress, the system never gets the signal to stand down. And that brings us to allostatic load. This is the cumulative structural wear and tear on your body's systems owing to repeated chronic adaptation to stressors. When you're constantly anticipating stress, this normally adaptive process turns totally toxic. Your body just gets flooded with mediators like cortisol and adrenaline, and because you can't shut this response off, it starts causing deep structural damage. Section 2. Allostasis and energy budgets, the financial cost of stress. I want you to start thinking of your body as having a strict, totally non-negotiable financial budget. But instead of dollars, the currency here is cellular energy. According to the energetic model of allostatic load, your body can only transform a finite amount of energy per unit of time. You've got energy dedicated to staying awake, energy for your vital organs, and a reserve. But look at what happens when allostasis is activated by stress. It just eats up that reserve energy. And when the stress doesn't stop and that reserve is totally gone, the energy has to come from somewhere, right? So the body starts stealing energy from the category labeled GMR, growth, maintenance, and repair. That stress-induced energy expenditure literally robs your cells of the very energy they need to maintain themselves. And this biological theft triggers a state called hypermetabolism. This basically means your body is expending energy far, far above your optimum level, literally just to survive the week. So every time you grit your teeth and push through, you aren't just having a tough day. You are creating an astronomical energetic cost. Your body is burning the candle at both ends, over-consuming energy just to keep those allostatic stress responses fired up. Which brings us to a really crucial question. What exactly gets cut when your body bankrupts that GMR budget? Well, to fuel your outward resilience, your internal biology makes some devastating budget cuts. It deprioritizes DNA repair, meaning genetic damage just starts accumulating. It halts telomere maintenance, which accelerates cellular aging. And it totally suppresses immune surveillance, leaving you wide open to disease. The very processes that keep you young, healthy, and functional are sacrificed just so you can cope with today's stress. This is exactly why people with higher energy expenditure from chronic stress literally age faster and die younger. Section 3. The Trap of John Henryism, Skin-Deep Success. We really need to talk about the human reality of this biological theft, especially how it impacts marginalized groups who are essentially forced to use high-effort coping strategies just to survive systemic pressures. Epidemiologists have identified this concept called John Henryism. It's named after the American folk hero who literally worked himself to death, and it defines a behavioral predisposition for incredibly effortful, active coping in response to intense environmental stressors, things like systemic racism or poverty. and it's perfectly captured by this idea. Observable achievements might look like positive resilience, but underneath it all, massive health degradation is happening. It's a skin-deep resilience. People exhibiting John Henryism might graduate, get that big promotion, and look incredibly successful, but they're achieving success with stress. They are biologically paying a devastating, entirely unseen price for that outward resilience. Section 4. Weathering and Cellular Aging. The Receipts of Resilience. So what actually happens when a society demands constant, high-effort coping from its most vulnerable populations? The epidemiological data gives us a really stark answer through the weathering hypothesis. This hypothesis explains that the cumulative burden of social, economic, and political stressors causes early health deterioration. When researchers compared all allostatic load scores across age patterns in the US, they found something super alarming. Because of the persistent stress inherent in navigating a race-conscious society, a Black individual might actually show the morbidity and mortality, the physical health deterioration, typical of a white individual who is a full 10 years older. This isn't just some abstract theory. It's a measurable physiological acceleration of aging caused directly by environmental stress. And listen, this allostatic load isn't just a fleeting feeling of being burnt out. It is a literal structural remodeling of your biology. Chronic exposure to stress hormones actually causes brain atrophy. We're talking about the shrinking of the prefrontal cortex, which handles rational thought, and the hippocampus, which manages your memory. And at the exact same time, it causes the amygdala, your fear and aggression center, to grow larger. On a cellular level, it leads to telomere attrition. Telomeres are those little protective caps on the ends of your chromosomes. So this isn't just burnout. Stress is literally taking a chainsaw to your chromosomes, forcing your cells into a state of senescence, where they stop dividing and just start pumping out toxic inflammation. Zooming all the way into the most microscopic level, we can actually see mitochondrial allostatic load in action. When your cellular engines are put under chronic stress, they physically fragment and swell up. They start leaking DNA, which your body immediately attacks as a foreign invader, and that triggers massive systemic inflammation. These damaged entities effectively become toxic zombie cells that refuse to die, but they drag down all the healthy cells around them. Your resilience is quite literally fracturing your cellular engines. Section 5. The Geroscience Paradigm, a Biological Shift. Okay, so if our cultural obsession with just pushing through is actively damaging our DNA, what do we actually do about it? Well, the emerging field of geroscience offers a totally different approach. The geroscience hypothesis states that aging biology itself is the root cause of chronic diseases. So instead of just telling people to toughen up and cope with a broken system, what if we therapeutically target the biological hallmarks of aging? By using interventions or geroprotectors, things like metformin, rapamycin, or senolytics that actually clear out those toxic zombie cells we just talked about, we could prevent multiple conditions all at once. We basically stop treating the symptoms of stress and we start protecting the fundamental biology. Let's put these two paradigms head to head for a second. The old resilience model, it's all about adapting to systemic stress. It inevitably increases your allostatic load, and it traps us in this exhausted cycle of reactive survival, just burning through our energy reserves. The geroscience model, on the other hand, is about proactive maintenance. It targets aging biology directly to extend what we call true health span. The entire goal here is the compression of morbidity. That means keeping you in a really firm period of adult vigor for as long as humanly possible and compressing any period of illness into a tiny, tiny window right at the very end of life. That's a huge upgrade from just expanding the amount of time you spend chronically ill and simply coping. Which brings us to the final thought for our explainer today. We've seen exactly how the sheer energetic cost of allostatic load drains our reserves and completely damages our cells. So if our biology is ultimately footing the bill for all this forced coping, is it time we stop celebrating mere survival and start demanding true health span? It is definitely time we rethink our energy budgets, protect our biology, and stop letting the myth of resilience secretly kill us.